What's up, everybody? My name is Joe Brown and this is Heresy Financial. Have you ever come across the argument that fiat money is bad money simply because it has no intrinsic value, and that we need to return to something with intrinsic value like a gold standard or maybe silver, and that those are good forms of money because they have intrinsic value, they're actually worth something? Well, today in this video, I'm going to prove to you why that argument is nonsense, because there is no such thing as intrinsic value. And don't worry, for any fellow gold bugs out there, I'm not going to ruin the argument for gold being good money. Rather, by showing that all value is actually subjective, we're actually going to strengthen the case for sound money. Ready? Let's dive in. All right, first we need to get our definitions straight. When somebody mentions value and says something has objective value or intrinsic value or value is subjective there, they're usually talking about one of two things. We need to make sure we're clear on which one we're talking about. The first thing you might be talking about is the market price. You buy a pair of Nikes, you spend $150, that is the objective market price. You buy a double animal style from In-N-Out, the objective market price is $3.75. So that's one thing that people are talking about when they're talking about value. They're just talking about the market exchange price. Now, the other thing that you might mean by value is the value that you assign to something personally. And the value that you assign to something personally is many times wildly disconnected from the objective market price of a given item. For instance, you might have in your possession a piece of jewelry that is passed down from earlier generations. Maybe it's a ring or a necklace from a grandparent or a great-grandparent. If you took that piece of jewelry into a pawn shop, let's just say you could get $200 for it. So the market price of that piece of jewelry, let's say, is $200. Let's also say you've got an iPhone just sitting in your closet you don't use anymore, and right now, it's an old iPhone, so if you wanted to sell it, you could go on eBay, list it for $300 and sell it today. So you've got two items. You've got a piece of jewelry from a grandparent that's worth $200 in terms of its market price, $200, and you've got an old iPhone that's worth $300. Now you're faced with a choice. Let's say for some weird reason you're walking down the street and you only have two items on you. You've got that old piece of jewelry and you've got that old iPhone. And somebody decides to rob you and they say, you don't have to give me both things, you only have to give me one of these items. Which one are you going to give that person? Technically, if there was such a thing as intrinsic value or objective value, you would give them the piece of jewelry and you'd keep the iPhone, because the market price of the iPhone is worth more than the market price of the jewelry. But valuation is subjective, it is not objective. Price is objective, not value. And so even though you're giving up a larger monetary amount by giving up that iPhone, that piece of jewelry holds more value to you personally than the monetary amount that it could fetch for you. Now, this example highlights something about value in that it is ordinal, not cardinal. This is another way of explaining how value is subjective and not objective. Because anybody can look at all of the items that they have, including the clothes on their back, the dollars in their bank account, and the items in their home, and you could relatively easy create a list of things that are the most valuable to you, all the way down to the things that are the least valuable to you. But what is not possible is to quantify the value of those items on that list, and especially in relation to each other. You're going to rank your mattress that is comfortable and you sleep on every single night as more valuable on your list of possessions than you're going to rank a dusty sock that got caught behind your dryer. But it's impossible to quantify exactly how much more valuable your mattress is than that dusty sock. And further than that, these value rankings are not cardinal, they're ordinal because they can change, especially depending on the quantity of each of those items. For instance, let's say that you are shipwrecked on an island. You're out boating on the ocean by yourself, a storm hits, your boat sinks, you get your life jacket on, but you get knocked out and you wake up stranded on a beach. It's a tiny little island and you're the only person there. Well, very quickly, you are going to have a list of needs start to pop up in your head. It's been a while since you drank some water, it's been a while since you ate food, and you only have the clothes on your back. So you start to search around the island, and lo and behold, you stumble across something you never thought you would see in a million years. There is a magic vending machine on this island. Now, this vending machine has a list of items, and all you have to do is hit a button, and the item you requested will magically appear. Now, on this vending machine, they have gallons of water, sandwiches, ponchos, and bars of gold. The problem is you can only use this vending machine once every day. Now, if market price was the same thing as value, and value wasn't subjective, and value rankings were cardinal rather than ordinal, you would look at this vending machine and rationally you would have to choose the bar of gold, because a bar of gold is far more valuable from a market price perspective than any of the other items on the list. But value is not objective, and value is not determined by market price. Value is subjective, and value rankings are ordinal. So what you're going to pick that first day is a gallon of water, because a gallon of water is more valuable to you that day than a sandwich or a poncho or a bar of gold. Now, you're on this island for a while, and you know it's going to be a while before somebody rescues you. So for the first 3 days straight, you choose a gallon of water every single day. You're getting hungrier and hungrier, but you still choose the water because it's a gallon. But something changes for you on day 4. You have leftover water now because you've had a gallon every single day and you haven't been drinking the whole thing. And now is where we realize that value lists are ordinal, not cardinal, because the water is not inherently more valuable than the sandwich on the island. Once you have enough bottles of water, all of a sudden, one more bottle of water is not more valuable to you than a sandwich is. On day 4, since you already have water and now you're more hungry than you are thirsty, now the sandwich becomes the most valuable thing to you to get on that day. Because as the quantity of something you own increases, the relative value of increasing the quantity one more unit goes down. Here's another way to look at it. There are still plenty of people on Earth today that live on $1 or $2 per day. If you walked up to any of these people and you said, hey, if you do 100 push-ups, I will give you an extra $1 a day for an entire year. Every single one of these people would do that because it would be worth increasing their income by 100% or 50% for an entire year just to do 100 push-ups. They only have $1 a day, so one more dollar a day makes a massive difference. Whereas if you go to the average person in the West, let's say somebody's making $60,000 a year, and you say, if you drop down and do 100 push-ups right now, I'll give you an extra $1 a day for your salary. That's going to take their total salary from $60,000 a year to $60,365 a year, over which the course of a year you will not notice. And I guarantee you there are plenty of people that might drop down to the ground and start trying, and after they get to about 12 to 15 push-ups, they would say, you know what? Nah, it's not worth it. Because that extra 1 unit, that one extra dollar, compared to the 60,000 that they already get, is inconsequential. They personally value not doing exercise more than they do that extra dollar, versus somebody who only has 1 or 2 of those drastically values that extra dollar more. Now, here's where things tend to confuse people. The subjective values that are driven by personal preferences for things in life, those valuations drive market prices. And that's why market prices are fundamentally volatile. Market prices do not stay the same because they're driven by things that are non-quantifiable, just personal preferences, which makes measuring prices itself sometimes a tricky thing to do, because prices are constantly changing. It's like trying to measure where the water stops on a beach. Depending on the second, the minute, the time of day, the time of month, and the time of year, the precise area in which the water stops on a beach will be different. But the thing about market prices is that when they're allowed to freely move, driven purely by personal preferences of regular individual actors, transactions are profitable for both sides of the transaction. When you go to the best burger restaurant in the world, In-N-Out, and you order that animal style double-double, you profit because your personal preference list at that moment, you are valuing the double-double above on your ordinal list of personal preferences. It's worth more to you than the $3.75. So given the choice between $3.75 or the double-double, that double-double is more valuable to you than that money. If they were equal value, you would not participate in the transaction. Similarly, when In-N-Out makes that double-double and sells it to you, they profit as well because they are receiving something that they value with a higher valuation than what they're giving to you. Otherwise, they wouldn't engage in that transaction. They want the $3.75 more than they want the burger. So in any transaction between two parties that are free to choose, both parties profit. And this is why voluntary trade and prices freely moving through the normal auction process of all individual actors buying and selling anything at any given time is so vital because it means that prices actually have a signal that is worth something. One more example of this because it's just vital to drive this point home that both parties profit in a transaction because you're only going to exchange items with somebody if you think that item is worth more to you than what you have, regardless of market price. And a great example that Robert Murphy uses is stocks. If you've got 100 shares of a stock and that stock is currently trading at $10 per share and you sell those shares, that means to you, $1,000 is more valuable to you than those 100 shares. Simultaneously, it means that the person who bought them from you, the person who buys those shares, to that person, those 100 shares of that stock are worth more to them, they're more valuable to them than $1,000. If you valued them equally, you would not engage in that transaction. The only way you're going to buy a stock is if you value that stock more than the dollars you're giving up. And finally, this is why having an accurate measuring stick of prices is so vital because you can't measure value because value is subjective and it's unquantifiable. But those valuations, the personal preferences, the aggregate preferences of all economic actors result in objective prices in the market. That means prices are reflecting somewhat what all of those personal preferences are, which means that if you're going to plan for economic action in the future, like saving or investing, you need to be able to trust those prices at least somewhat that they're indicative of reality, which means that measuring prices with a ruler that doesn't move is vital because prices are so volatile just by themselves that, like I said earlier, it's like measuring where the water ends on a beach. It's constantly moving, driven by literally celestial forces. And so if you're trying to take those measurements of where the water ends on the beach, and at the same time, your ruler or your tape measure is constantly fluctuating or growing or shrinking, it means that any measurements are basically worthless. And the units of money that a society uses are how you measure prices. Obviously, you measure prices in number of dollars or euros or yen or pounds. And so the more unstable the supply of money is, the more meaningless prices become. Now, if you could press a magic button and say that the total supply of dollars that are in existence today could never change and it was locked in place, it would serve as a perfect measurement tool of prices. It would be better than gold because gold inflates at 1 to 2% every year for thousands of years as they pull more gold out of the ground. It would be better than Bitcoin because Bitcoin, again, currently inflates right now. And so it has nothing to do with intrinsic value, which is not real because value is subjective according to personal preferences and ordinal lists of all economic actors coming together to a consensus aggregate market price. What it has to do with is money being unmanipulatable. And something like gold in the past and potentially Bitcoin in the future is inherently difficult, if not impossible, to manipulate the supply of. And that's why hard money provides a solid foundation for an economy, because you don't have to rely on the discipline of governments and central banks who have an incentive to manipulate the supply of money. You don't have to rely on them to just hold back and decide not to do that. And the final note is that's why price controls are so destructive, because as soon as a price control is put in on anything, whether it's controlling the price of labor through like a minimum wage, or controlling the price of energy or oil or products, or putting price caps on certain items that free market participants can sell. It's why they're so damaging, because the second a price control happens, you cause market distortions and you eliminate both sides of a transaction being able to profit from something. You no longer have a win-win situation. You inherently start causing winners and losers for transactions on something that has price controls, resulting in wealth destruction over time and other unforeseen unforeseen consequences. So in summary, value is subjective, it is not objective. There's no such thing as intrinsic value because value itself comes from personal preferences, and what people prefer is unquantifiable and it is ordinal in terms of their ranking rather than cardinal, and depends on the quantity that somebody has of any given item and are constantly changing. And those subjective valuations that all economic actors place on any given item come together to form a consensus, an aggregate that results in market pricing and objective exchange value. And it's vital to have money that doesn't move because money is simply the measuring stick by which you measure prices. And with prices being so volatile since they're driven by subjective valuations, you need a measuring stick that doesn't move so that those prices can give you as accurate a signal as possible about the nature of reality. I hope those explanations helped. If they did, do me a favor, don't be like this guy, be like this guy. And hit that subscribe button. I'm really close to 50,000 subscribers and it would mean the world to me if I could get to 100 by the end of the year. And if I get to 50, I'm really close to 50 right now, it's almost the end of June, that means I'm halfway to 100 by halfway through the year. So if you enjoyed the video, help me out, hit that subscribe button. And as always, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.